Hello, hello. So let's talk about why you are stuck, why most consultants are stuck, and how to fix it by niching down. Here's a very important piece. I wanted to debunk some myths about what niching down is and positioning is, because that has a massive impact on your business, okay? And so most people think that they have a marketing problem or a sales problem, lead generation problem, or content problem, but what they really have is a positioning problem. Positioning is really the foundation, the root cause of all the issues that you are probably experiencing. So issues like attracting the wrong clients, attracting the low paying clients, not being able to sell easily, not being able to explain what you do in an easy way, being overwhelmed with delivery, not being profitable, not being able to scale, not being able to hire properly. So all the issues that you might be experiencing, profitability, scaling, getting new clients, working long term with clients, is all of that is caused by your bad positioning, and that hinges on your niche. And so no one knows if no one knows what you do, who you are for, who your offer is for, or why it's worth anything, then you will not be able to build your business and scale your consulting business. If your calendar is full of sales calls with the wrong people, or worse, no calls at all, then you're not positioned clearly. It's as simple as that. And the number one fix is you really need to niche down, not just what you do, but what you do, who you do it for, and how you talk about it, and how you deliver that. Okay, so let's break it down into and then look into like why niching down in positioning matters, right? So first of all, you cannot really sell something that people don't understand. A confused mind doesn't buy, and so if people don't understand what you have to offer, if they don't understand what kind of problem you're solving, it's really hard to sell, right? Then you cannot scale. Problem number two is you cannot scale what's too vague and too broad. Customization doesn't scale. Being spreading yourself too thin, that will not help you scale. And when I say scale, it's not necessarily that you want to scale to hundreds of millions of dollars, but even getting another client in a moment where you are not positioned properly, you're not niched down, will add massive complexity to what is already complex, right? So if you need to have another client that is requiring a custom project from you, and custom delivery and custom proposal, then that is adding the complexity. And in order for you to scale, whatever the scale means, whatever the definition of scaling in your case is, you need to be efficient. You need to be as productive as possible, meaning you need to deliver as much work in a lowest time possible. And I don't mean overworking. I don't mean just squeezing the last bit of the juice that you have in your day. What I mean is not doing the things that you shouldn't be doing, not doing the things that you can maybe delegate, not doing the things that you're just not that are not driving your business forward, that are not moving the needle, right? So another problem with lack of niche or niching down and positioning is that generic offers, they just create this price resistance and low trust buyers. Because if you're generic, if you're not specialized in what you deliver and what kind of problem you solve, it's really hard to put a higher price to it. You cannot be premium doing everything and not solving a specific problem. And then sharp positioning, that means that results, when you have sharp positioning, results in having an instant relevance with your audience. And then you can command premium fees as well, right? So if you position yourself as someone who is, let's say, working with accountants and helping them scale their accounting firms in a profitable way, if that is your offer, then accountants will automatically trust your process because your positioning is way sharper than any business coach out there who says, I help businesses grow. And so changing that positioning is important for you to be able to build that relevance, because if I'm an accountant and I look for someone to help me, I will connect better with someone who focuses and specializes in helping accountants versus someone who does everything else, right? So that creates that relevance, and then the relevance creates a premium room for premium fees, right? So the thing is that if someone can't tell in 7 seconds if your offer is for them, you don't have a niche, you have noise. And so let's talk about what are the symptoms of poor positioning, so that you can kind of assess whether that's your problem or not. And so some examples of like what is a bad positioning. I help everyone. Well, listen, I was there myself a couple of years ago. So I've been a solo consultant for years, and I focused on, because I used to run 3 marketing agencies, and I was getting a lot of questions from other marketing agency owners. So in terms of like, how do you grow this? How do you make it profitable? How the hell are you scaling them so fast? I became this agency guy and consultant who helps agencies. And so people would come to me with various questions, from, selling to delivery to scaling to lead generation to, operations and hiring and firing. Like, it was really truly how to run, operate, and scale a marketing agency. And so I became this marketing guy or marketing agency guy, right? But then I was not able to really be focused on and have proper positioning. And I would tell them, or my positioning would be, I provide 360 degrees support for marketing agencies, which basically says nothing. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And then I would have to get on a call and explain my leads or prospects, like what it means and how I can do that and what am I doing and what is the outcome and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's so much harder to do that when you are vague. So I help businesses grow. Like, what are you helping them grow? Potatoes? Like, like, what are you actually doing? What is the problem that you're fixing? And remember that every business exists to solve a problem. And so what is the specific problem that you're solving is a question that you have to ask yourself before you go any further in growing a business. Okay, so I help everyone is not a good messaging. When you sell multiple things to multiple types of people, that is a problem of positioning as well. You have to focus on one audience. You have to focus, especially in the beginning, focus on one audience. Focus on solving one specific problem in one specific time frame for a specific amount of money with a specific deliverable, specific goal, specific outcome. So if you sell multiple things to multiple people, then you customize your business, and customization doesn't scale. So it's really not possible to scale. Let's say you're working with accountants on helping them, streamline their operations, let's say. And then you also work with lawyers, and then they have a completely different problem, maybe with marketing. And then you work with real estate agents, and they have a problem with lead generation. Those 3, they're somewhat connected, but also at the same time, this one is lead generation, this one is ops, this one is something else. So you now have to have 3 different offers, 3 different products, 3 different ways of delivering, and you work with 3 different people, and you have to market to 3 different audiences, and you have to sell to them differently, and they're completely different when it comes to delivery, right? So that is an issue. If your clients are asking you, like, so what exactly do you do? That is an indication, that is a symptom of poor positioning. If that happens once or twice, that's completely fine. Obviously, like, you'll get those once in a while. But if that keeps happening, then that is a strong signal, strong indication that you have to change your positioning. Not change, refine, be more specific, right? If you constantly have to justify your price to your prospect, that is another signal that you have a positioning problem. Because if you position yourself as an expert in fixing a problem for this specific audience, then someone who has that problem coming to you and needs that problem to be fixed, if your offer and positioning and your niche down, if everything is dialed in, then the price is not a question, right? Because they have a problem that you can fix, right? This is the product market fit where your prospects have a problem that you can fix, and then they are willing to solve that problem and willing to pay the amount of money that you are asking them, right? So you have to have that mix of those elements. And then if you're attracting, another symptom, very common, is that if you attract low paying clients, low budget clients, beginner clients, then that is an indication that you have a problem with positioning as well. So, if your calendar basically is full of tire kickers, then your positioning is completely off, right? And so it's I say that if your calendar is full of tire kickers, your positioning invited them in, and that's something we have to solve, right? So now that we know what are the symptoms of it, let's think about what niching down really means, because I think there is a misunderstanding around of what niching down means, because it's not just about picking an industry, okay? It is all about solving one clear problem for a specific person with a very specific approach or framework or model in a very specific time frame, right? So positioning is your message plus your market plus your method, right? So for example, I don't just help consultants grow. I help solo consultants build a lean, premium, group leverage business that scales to $100,000 with 50-80% margins, and zero burnout. That is way better positioning. It's not perfect, but it's just off the cuff. But it's way better than I help consultants grow, right? So it's very specific, it's tangible, it's solving one clear problem, and it has a very distinct approach to it, right? So how do we niche down? Now that we know that niching down is not about picking an industry, that's part of it, but how do we niche down? So step number one is picking a clear person, right? Or clear avatar or clear audience, right? So who do you help? You have to be very, very specific. What level are they at? Are they beginners, startups, beginners, intermediate, advanced? Speaking of an audience, I think it's worth to mention this here, is that you want to be choosing, there's different layers of or levels of within your audience. So let's say you work with accountants, you work with lawyers, you work with consultants, you work with agency owners, doesn't matter. There's going to be different layers and sophistication level of those who are within that audience, right? You'll have a lawyer who's making $100,000 per year, and then you have a lawyer who's making 11 million a year. And so both of them are lawyers, so you cannot just go say, hey, I work with lawyers, because 100K and 11 million a year lawyer will have completely different mindsets, completely different problems, completely different attitude, completely different ideas and approach to working with someone, right? So you have to be very specific on that front. And so choose your audience, make sure you're very, very specific on that front. So that's number one. Number two, you have to identify that specific, painful, high stakes problem. A problem that they call a wake up problem, right? Something that they wake up in the morning and they go like, oh man, I gotta fix this thing, right? So I was talking to someone who said that what they're doing, what was it? It was in an accounting space actually. They said, oh, we help set up QuickBooks. Like, we help you set up your accounting software. I honestly, personally, never heard about anyone who wakes up in the morning and they go like, oh man, I gotta set up QuickBooks today, or Xero, or whatever else you're using. What I have seen though is people who would wake up in the morning and say, damn, we're not being paid on time. And if your accounting software is solving a problem of not being paid on time, then that is the way to go. And then your positioning should be, I help business owners of a specific type. So let's say I help lawyers be paid on time. I help plumbers be paid on time. I hate plumbers send proposals and invoices in 5 minutes or less. That is what they want. They don't care how you do that. They don't even know that it's about their accounting software being misaligned and the settings are messed up and then the setup is not properly done. So they wake up saying, well, I need to send 20 invoices, or I haven't been paid yet for something I have done, I delivered on last month. That is the problem. And then you setting up that accounting software is the answer. So, think about like what's keeping them stuck. What is keeping them up at night? What is the first thing that they wake up in the morning and think about? What do they Google at 2 a.m. like how to fix this, right? So that is the problem. So and then your niche is the intersection of the audience that you have chosen in step 1 and the problem that you're fixing in step 2. The intersection of those two, that is your niche. I help who solve what, right? And so what is important here, though, is that you want to go as narrow on both of those as possible. So as narrow on the audience and as narrow and tangible and focused as possible when it comes to the problem that you're fixing. Now, obviously, you don't want to go too narrow because then you will end up working with just a few people. But I really honestly, like from a theoretical perspective, yes, that's true. You shouldn't go too narrow, but I've never seen anyone go too narrow and not have enough clients to actually work on stuff. So you should try to go as narrow as possible. And even with that mindset, you probably will still be relatively broad because we have a tendency to kind of go a little bit broader. Now, one kind of tip to this is that you don't want to be broad on both. You want to be as narrow as possible on both, but it's possible if you're super narrow, let's say on the audience, then you can be broader on the problem that you're solving. So if you're very narrow and you only work with accountants in, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, okay, very, very narrow, then you can say, I help them with, and marketing, lead generation, this and this and that, because you're very specific and your relevance is very, very high because you specialize in helping these people in that geography within the specific, let's say, range of profits or revenue as well, right? Now, you can go the other way around and say, and have your audience broader. And then you could say, well, I work with business owners, very, very broad. But then your problem that you're fixing is very, very specific, right? You could say, I work with business owners and I help them, build a landing page to schedule or really to share the calendar, whatever that is, just off the cuff, right? So very broad, and then the very, very specific problem that audience has. So don't go broad on both. Go as narrow as possible on both if possible. If not, you can go a little bit broader on one or the other, but then keep the other one very, very narrow. Okay? So that's step number 1 and 2. Step number 3 is you have to have that tangible result. Like, what is it that you help them? Like, how do you help them? Like, you cannot just say, well, I'm helping them to grow. I'm giving them freedom. What is the specific win that they walk away with after having worked with you? Okay, so that's step number 3. And then step number 4 is that also make your method, make your framework, make your signature approach obvious. Show them that your system works, not you, not your vibe, not your personality. It is the system that you have built. And I see that being a very, very big problem for a lot of consultants, because they have a tendency to come in and say, hey, you are buying me, you are buying my brain, which sounds cool. But then at the same time, that means you have to sell your hours of your time, and that is not scalable. Instead, what you want to build a system, a framework, a model that is yours, that you built based on your experience, and know-how, education, whatever, and then you implement that system. The benefit of this approach is that you can also train someone else on implementing that system. So then You are the author of the system. You know it's a replicable system. It's a cookie cutter in a way approach, and then you can have another consultant or someone who is helping you implement that system for the client. Um, I I probably know what you're thinking now. Like, oh no, it's not a cookie cutter thing. Oh, you cannot just have a system like that. It's not that simple. It's not, it needs customization. Sure, I understand, but at the same time, I would challenge you and see if you could strip everything down into a core of, you go to your clients, just look at past projects that you have delivered and past clients and see what is the common denominator of how you delivered projects and what you actually delivered for them. And you will see a pattern there. There are things that you do every single time, and you do them subconsciously. You do them because you're an expert. You just come in and go in and do it, right? You don't overthink it. You don't question it. You just deliver. You just come in and like, yeah, this is how we do it. It's not linear. It's probably quite messy, because not everyone has this structured approach to things. I don't. I just if back in the day when I was doing one-on-ones, I would just go in like, yeah, then we have to do this and this and that, and I would just deliver on that. There wasn't too much of a structure in it, and so a painful process for me was painful but necessary. That saved my life and my business. Is to really think about, okay, what is the actual logical approach to this? How can I systematize this? How can I templatize this? What is the framework or logic I am following, even though I'm not in my head following any logic because it's not linear. That's not how our brain works. But like, would it be if I wanted to add logic to this? What would be the next logical step after this, what I have done? Is this thing that I have done as step one, is this really step one, or should I be doing something else? So it's all about analyzing and reviewing what you have, like how you deliver for your clients, and then building systems out of that. You have your own custom individualized way of getting results for your clients. And so you just need to note it down and make it, document it and make it your signature framework. What works really, really well is building a visual representation of that framework as well, or of that model, so that it's easy to deliver, it's easy to sell, it's easy to market, it's easy to talk about. And that's something that we built as part of my program as well. We start with positioning, niching down, and then we build a visual representation of what it looks like, so that it's easy both on the front end of selling, marketing, and scaling, but also on the back end of it. Like, well, what are we really about? What should my content be about? What is it that we focus on? And so that you also can be really focused on the things that matter and not get distracted by shiny objects, right? So again, the kind of close the whole loop on this. Think about a framework to explain your positioning and explain your niche. I help who solve a painful problem so that they can, and that's the tangible outcome, right? So I help who, your audience, solve what is the painful problem that you're solving, so that what is the tangible result, tangible outcome, right? So a few before and afters that I can think of is, I help people grow online. That's obviously not a great positioning. That's something that I probably had as my positioning, as my kind of bumper sticker years ago. You could say something like, I help mid six-figure course creators scale to $250,000 with a productized backend offer. That is way more structured, way more focused, right? You help who solve what kind of problem, and what is the tangible result, right? So another idea, or another agency actually who I work with, they worked with startups. And then when we looked at their positioning and niche down, we ended up kind of changing the startups word into growth stage wellness brands doing 30 to $80,000 per month who need a creative director but don't want to hire one. That was our kind of repositioning. So from we work with startups to this very specific positioning, right? So remember that if you are a generalist, so as in like you really work with everyone to grow them, very general. Generalists are get ghosted, and specialists get paid. And I don't want you to confuse the fact that you have a broad knowledge and you might be a generalist in that sense. I am one as well. I have had a consulting business. I've had marketing agencies. I had two ecom brands. I work in a corporate. My experience, is pretty broad, and so you could say it's general. Like I'm not a guy who just knows how to do email marketing in Klaviyo, but that's not what that's not how I'm positioning myself, right? I'm positioning myself as someone who specializes in very specific thing and leverages that very broad experience and knowledge to deliver on that specificity, right? So that's the difference. Some of the common kind of mindset blogs or fears is that a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to niche down because I don't want to limit myself. And I hope you understand, based on what I have discussed, that that's not the case. You're not limiting, really. You are actually attracting better crowd faster and are able to deliver on your promise faster and better. When you think about niching down as casting a net, when you have the fish net, and if you just stretch it too much, the holes in that net will be massive. And so we will not only lose the big fish, but also the small fish. You will not catch anyone. But if you let it be the size it's supposed to be, and the net is tight, then you're gonna catch way more and better fish, right? You might also be thinking, well, I can help lots of people. Sure, you can, and so can I. But the point of this is to really focus on who you want to work with and how you can deliver amazing results in the most efficient way. And another analogy to picture this is that if you think about, imagine there's you're on a lake, and you have a bunch of small rocks in your hand, and you throw them in the water. You'll see that they don't make a big splash, and they create those small ripples, right? Ripples meaning build awareness and then people knowing about you. But if you grab one huge rock and you drop it, it will go down so fast, so deep, it will create a massive splash. There's going to be a sound. There's going to be and that's an event, and then the ripple will be massive. So that is the difference between being being kind of spread out and not working with a specific niche, and dropping those small little rocks, a little bit of content, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, versus working, going really deep into your audience and into your industry and having a massive impact on it, right? So probably another mindset block or a fear is that, what if I pick the wrong niche? There isn't really a wrong niche. You can actually make any niche work as long as it's worth it, right? So as long as you like working in that niche, and as long as it's paying the bills, and it's a growing market and you can make money on it. At the same time, I would say date the niche first for a couple months and see how you like it, and see if you need to tweak your niche a little bit, maybe on the offer side, maybe on the audience side. So don't feel that once you decide on, I'm working with consultants, that you can never go back, like in my case, to working with agencies. I still work with agencies. I still attract them as clients. It's just I am now a little broader on the type of a client that I work with. But it doesn't mean, if I wanted to, it doesn't mean I cannot, niche into some other industry in the future if I wanted to. So date the niche for 3 months, 6 months, and see how it goes. See how you like it. See how your message resonates, and see how it is. How efficient you are in delivery. How does your offer resonate with them too? And then make a decision whether you want to be this specific or you want to change to something else, right? So the thing is that you're not really limiting yourself when you niche down. You are making it easy for people to say yes to what you do and to the prices that you're asking, right? So positioning isn't a branding exercise. It's a revenue strategy, really. Because when you nail it, your sales process will shorten, your pricing goes up, and your content hits harder, and your delivery is easier, right? So what I would invite you to do is to really audit your positioning. Ask yourself the question of am I clear? Did I get this question about what do I do? Am I getting a lot of tire kickers? Am I attracting the right crowd? And see if you're positioning well. And if you need any help with positioning, let me know. I have a few resources, assets, and programs that help with it as well. But I hope this was helpful. I just wanted to clarify what niche is and how to go about it. So I'll see you in the next one.